Now, this both the speakers, if anyone has got any questions, they are willing to answer and clarify your doubts. Now it is open for discussion for the both these two speakers, Dr. Dinato and Dr. Javedkar, please. Any questions from audience, anybody, from the participants? Yes. Oh, I think Dr. Kulkarni is now available, I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
Do we start?
Yeah, please. Dr. Kulkarni.
Do you see my slides?
Yes.
Can
Are you able to see my slides?
You can see only your biodata.
No, sir, we are not yet able to see your slides. Kindly share your screen with us, sir.
Is it seen now?
Yes, sir, it is visible, sir.
Do you see my slides now?
Yes, sir, we can see it, sir.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
good morning, everyone. So, I'll be talking about neurological manifestations of COVID. We know that this pandemic has caused tremendous effect on multiple aspects of the life, and probably the medical fraternity is maximally affected. There are multiple coronaviruses which have been described earlier. We had a Merck virus, we had a SARS virus. But COVID-19 has caused much more propensity for other systems compared to only the respiratory system. The other viruses have predominant effect on the respiratory system, but COVID-19 has affected the other systems in much more way. So the neurological manifestations of any viruses for that matter can be direct manifestations or indirect manifestations. The direct manifestations are because of infection. It can be because of the immunological changes that would occur after infection. So they are called as either para-infectious, which would occur immediately after infection, or post-infectious, which would occur much more later after infection. Or they can be secondary to the underlying systemic disorders where the manifestations are indirect. So patient may have shock, he may have low platelets, or he may have hypoxia, and that would cause neurological manifestations. We also divide neurological manifestations in multiple ways. They can be directly during an acute phase of COVID, or they can occur after recovery. So that is post-COVID neurological manifestation. They can be also according to the mechanism. They can be directly because of COVID or indirectly because of COVID. And as per the site involvement, they can be either central nervous system involvement or a peripheral nervous system involvement. So the manifestations which have been described with COVID include loss of taste and smell sensation. We all know about them. There are headaches which have been described. Patient can get delirium and encephalopathy. There are some reports of encephalitis because of COVID. It causes a special type of encephalopathy, which is called a necrotizing encephalopathy. Of course, strokes have been described, which can be arterial as well as venous. And there are post-infectious as well as para-infectious manifestations, which are predominantly immune-mediated. If it involves the peripheral nerve, it is called a GBS. If it involves the brain and spinal cord, we call it as acute disseminated encephalomyelitis. And the post-COVID neurological manifestations include fatigue, anosmia. Strokes are also shown after patient had developed COVID. GBS and edema also have been described. And there are a large number of neuropsychiatric manifestations. And I don't want to talk about neuropsychiatric manifestations in front of psychiatrists, but these are also been described as far as post-COVID manifestations are concerned. So the neurological manifestations occur predominantly because of the systemic effect, which are metabolic encephalopathies because of hypoxia, uremia, hepatitis, hyponatremia, multiple causes. It can be because of secondary bacterial sepsis. Fever itself can cause some neurological manifestations like seizures. Drugs can cause problem, and of course, related to prolonged ventilation, patient can get these illnesses like critical illness, neuromyopathy, where patient develops a weakness in the limbs, which is part of a long, prolonged hospitalization of the patient. The mechanism of neurological manifestations are multifold. It can be because of direct damage of the tissue because of virus. The virus has been shown to have neurotropism. So the virus has been demonstrated in neurons, and it is believed that when you get anosmia, the virus enters through the olfactory nerve in the brain and nervous system, and it can cause neurological manifestations. There are few autopsy reports which show that the virus has neurotropism. It was predominantly described because of SARS virus, but also been described by other viruses also. But the major cause of neurological manifestation includes endothelial dysfunction, the inflammation, not just the plain inflammation, but there is a thromboinflammation. So there is an inflammation on which there is a formation of thrombus, and you get multiple thrombi, which leads to infarcts and many other neurological complications. And of course, because of the immune responses which are dysregulated, you can get the immunological mechanisms. And there is some role of the ACE2 related pathway, which has been described. The predominant cause is direct neurotropism and the thromboinflammation and the endothelial dysfunction, which leads to neurological manifestations in COVID. So COVID-19 we know is more severe in people who have comorbidities like diabetes and hypertension. And of course, many neurological complications also would occur in people who have got risk factors. So someone who has got diabetes, hypertension, he has higher risk of getting strokes. And when he gets a stroke with COVID, we don't know whether the neurological complications which occur in COVID are incidental, both the disorders are occur at the same time, whether they're triggered by COVID or whether it is caused by COVID. So this is a big debate which is ongoing in neurology fraternity, whether how many manifestations are incidental, how many are triggered, and how many are caused because of the virus per se. So going to the manifestation, the commonest is being anosmia and ageusia, which is a fairly common manifestation. And when the virus came in 2019 and early part of 2020, we knew that this was one of the most specific manifestations. It was described in a European study in 86% of the patients. It is definitely more frequent compared to other viruses which involves the upper respiratory system like influenza. So it is believed that it is not because of just the inflammation of the nasal mucosal cavity, but because of involvement of the olfactory nerve. Just like olfactory nerve, other cranial nerves like facial nerve or even abducent nerves also can be sometimes involved. And it is important that we know that olfactory nerve is a nerve which directly goes from the nose to the nervous system. So this can be a way through which the virus enters the nervous system and causes the other neurological manifestations. Headaches also have been described with COVID. Again, the headaches are tension type headache. They are moderate in severity. They are bilateral, temporoparietal. Sometimes they can be involving forehead, usually exacerbated by bending forward. And we know that these kind of headaches can occur because of number of causes, but it is believed that because of inflammation or invasion of the trigeminal nerve endings because of the virus, or the pro-inflammatory mediators causing cytokine release can lead to these kind of headaches. So headache is not a very classic manifestation. We know that headache can occur because of number of viral infections, including dengue, including chikungunya. Even with influenza, we get headache. But it is believed that headache can also occur because of inflammatory mechanisms in COVID. Fatigue also has been very common. It is very common during acute phase, and it continues throughout the course of the illness. It leads to significant cause of disability, loss of function. Again, fatigue can be multifactorial. It is not a classic neurological manifestation, but fatigue also has been described with COVID. Seizures have been described with COVID. Now, the seizures occur because of number of mechanisms. They are usually generalized seizures. In a study, there were 48 patients who had seizures in one of the large pool analysis. They are more with fever and comorbidities, so they can be triggered because of fever, like the febrile seizure that children get, or they can be because of people who develop additional encephalopathy also. It is believed that seizures occur because of invasion, activation of the neuroinflammatory pathways, and it can be because of direct inflammation or direct invasion because of the virus. And large number of metabolic factors like hyponatremia, hypoxia can also lead to seizures. So seizures can be multifactorial. It is not a very classic manifestation of COVID. Encephalopathy is believed to be the most common neurological manifestation of COVID. In first study, it was described from Wuhan. It was described in large number of patients. 31%, almost 1/3 of their patients had COVID-related encephalopathy. But the numbers have reduced in later publication, and presently the number is anywhere between 7 to 31% in multiple studies. The encephalopathy can be in the form of delirium, confusion. Sometimes patient can be so drowsy that they become comatose. And then, of course, there can be seizures. Seizures are especially more common in children. We know that children have more chance of getting seizures. There are a wide range of causes leading to encephalopathy because of multiple metabolic derangements, hypoxia, drugs, toxins can lead to COVID-related encephalopathy. And the mechanism, as I said, is because of hemodynamic instability, endothelial dysfunction, leading to this kind of feature. There is a variety of encephalopathy which is described as ANE, acute necrotizing encephalopathy. It has been reported in certain patients. It is because of intense surge of pro-inflammatory cytokines in the brain that leads to focal damage to the blood-brain barrier, and it leads to edema and necrosis of the brain. So, typically involving bilateral thalami, this kind of encephalopathy has been described. It is not just because of metabolic factors, but there is an immune mechanism also in this. And this encephalopathy sometimes is treated by giving immunological treatment. It is predominantly more common in children. This kind of acute necrotizing encephalopathy also has been described with other viruses, especially in children. We had seen it with influenza. We had also seen it with dengue. And then there can be a posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome where suddenly patient can lose consciousness, he or she can get seizures and visual disturbances. This has also been reported in around 10 patients with COVID. Again, not a common presentation with COVID. This is being described with multiple other viruses. It is well known with eclampsia and porphyria and many other similar disorders. Encephalitis, focal encephalitis is not a very common presentation because of COVID. The clinical features are like encephalopathy. However, there can be involvement of features to suggest that the CNS is involved. So they can have abnormal CSF, they can have CT or MRI changes, and there can be focal abnormalities on EEG. And this is one patient where you can see that there is bilateral thalamic involvement. This patient was a proven COVID who developed this bilateral thalamic lesions as well as involvement of the temporal lobe. And this is one case from literature where patient had COVID-related encephalitis. We had seen 2 patients who had suspected COVID-related encephalitis. But before we could do more work, both these patients died. We had done CT scan on both these patients, which showed these similar thalamic lesions. So COVID-related encephalitis is not a common presentation, but it is being described. The commonest manifestations with COVID for the neurologist is stroke. And this is one paper that we wrote about 6 months ago, which was the first Indian experience of COVID-related stroke from India, which we wrote from our institute. The incidence of strokes in COVID was 6% from Wuhan. In the pool analysis, it comes to around 0.9 to 2.7%. In our series, stroke was seen only in 0.27% of all COVID-related patients who were admitted in the hospital. The COVID stroke can present with 4 ways. Number 1, patient has COVID, and during the course of COVID, he or she develops stroke. Secondly, stroke can be a presenting manifestation of COVID. So patient presents with stroke, and within 1 or 2 days, he or she would develop COVID-related symptoms. Third, patient has COVID, and then you do his routine test where COVID is positive, but he or she does not have any symptoms of COVID. And fourth is, patient has been discharged from COVID, and after a month, he or she can develop stroke. So these are 4 ways of presentation of stroke in a patient with COVID. And then there are 2 categories of patients that we have seen. Number 1, patient can be elderly people who have comorbidities. So elderly with diabetic and hypertension, he or she develops stroke during the course of illness. So we know that these strokes can be probably incidental or triggered because of COVID. But there were patients who were younger patients who did not have any classic stroke risk factors, sorry for the spelling of factor, and then they developed stroke. So those were the strokes which we think are probably caused because of COVID per se. And there are large and medium vessel strokes. At times we have seen multiple areas involved. Here you can see in one MRI, there is a large infarct that you have seen. The patient can also have evidence of thrombosis elsewhere in the body. It can be in the pulmonary veins, it can be in the arteries of the limbs, but even DVTs are also been seen with these patients. The mechanisms of stroke in COVID are because of procoagulant state. It can be because of endothelial cell infection leading to thromboinflammation. Sometimes there can be destabilization of carotid plaque, and there can be sometimes vasculitis in these patients. And investigation-wise, we do all sorts of investigation, D-dimer, pro-inflammatory pathways, etc. We don't know what is the best way of treatment to prevent these strokes. Anticoagulation probably is definitely better than antiplatelets. We don't know what is the duration for which you're going to use anticoagulation. Our policy was to use anticoagulation during hospitalization and then use a newer anticoagulant agent at the time of discharge for at least a period of 3 months to prevent the strokes. Our policy was to use LMWH, and then at the time of discharge, we were doing this D-dimer test. And if it was normal, we were giving them aspirin. If the D-dimer was high, we were giving them NOAC. This treatment was continued for a period of 3 months. This is the policy that we use in our hospital. Everyone has their own policies for stroke prevention. Venous sinus thrombosis also been described with strokes. We didn't get any of patients who have venous sinus thrombosis. And intracerebral hemorrhage also been described with COVID. Not very common. It is because of thrombocytopenia or DIC that they can get sometimes intracranial hemorrhage. We had seen one patient who had intracranial hemorrhage because of COVID. Edema as a part of post or para-infectious manifestations have been described with COVID, where patient get demyelination involving brain, spinal cord, multiple areas, predominantly seen in children. There are few reports with COVID. It is treated by giving steroids, plasma action, and IVIG, etc. And next, post-infectious or para-infectious manifestation, which has been described with GBS. You know that GBS is a neuropathy, which is a severe neuropathy where a patient gets ascending paralysis. It starts typically 1 week after the onset of respiratory symptom of COVID. It doesn't differ from the typical GBS, and there are reports of both types of cases which have been described. We had seen 6 patients of COVID-related GBS, and they are treated with IVIG or plasma exchange, and they do reasonably well compared to the strokes that did not do much well as far as COVID-related strokes are concerned. And then there are delayed neuropsychiatric manifestations with COVID, where patients have presented with cognitive decline, they have loss of memory, they have poor concentration, lack of interest, impaired syntax formation, impaired judgment as well as executive function, predominant fatigue as a manifestation. So they present with predominantly something which looks like a frontal lobe syndrome, which is a milder syndrome. Then there can be affective symptoms also, as well as psychosis has been described. Of course, psychiatrists who know more about these conditions than me, but neuropsychiatric manifestations have been described after COVID, and they are usually not with acute COVID, but as a later presentation of COVID. So to finish my talk, my take-home message is the virus has neurological manifestations which are much more than the previous coronaviruses like SARS and MERS. Neurological manifestation can be seen in acute phase. They can also occur in post-COVID phase. So it is not just that during COVID the patient have to be monitored. We have to monitor them for at least 3 months following discharge to see whether they are developing any neurological complication. The mechanism of neurological complications include direct viral involvement, endothelial dysfunction, thromboinflammation, immune pathway involvement, and probably ACE2 regulation. And we don't know what is the best treatment option for these strokes to prevent these strokes, especially in conditions like stroke. We need therapeutic trials to decide which is the best treatment as far as the stroke prevention or stroke treatment is concerned. I think I'll stop here. Happy to take if there are any questions. Sorry for the delay.
Thank you, Dr. Kulkarni. You stuck to your time and very nice presentations. Now, I would like to thank all the 3 speakers who spoke very extensively, and I'm sure all of you, at least I've been very much benefited by this talks. Dr. Dinoto, he spoke extensively on the psychological problems associated with this COVID-19. It has affected large populations of the whole world, especially manifested in anxiety, depression, distress, PTSD, panic attacks, and so on and so forth. And he has also mentioned that it has affected not only psychologically, physically, economically, culturally, every sphere of our human existence. Dr. Javadekar, really it is nice to, and what I liked about Dinoto is this, they don't be prepared and don't be panic. This is very good. I will say it's the best takeaway home message he has given to us. Don't be panic. Really, you have to face it. And I tell you, Dinoto, this has definitely, our own people have started developing their own skill in various ways in tackling this, that working at home. They have developed their own methods like meditations, indoor exercises, communicating with the friends, relatives via phone, video, etc. And they have really stood this human tragedy in many ways. And Dr. Javadkar, I'm really very enlightening. To be very frank, I read in somewhere that some gastrointestinal symptoms are, this COVID is manifesting as gastrointestinal symptoms, but you have very clearly shown, yes, it affects gastrointestinal. Probably, I personally feel it is again from the nose, it goes down and it affects the eye. But one good thing, the symptoms are not very major and minor. Pancreas, though affected, but very few are reported in that way. It is a good thing. And Dr. Kulkarni, he has again told neurological aspects, effects of the COVID in various ways. And he says it is mainly due to direct inflammations of this virus on the neurological systems. And it manifests various ways, which is he has spoke, and also about the stroke and how you manage about it. I thank all these three speakers. They have very nicely brought out the subjects, which is a worthwhile discussion in our CME. I thank all three of you very much, and all of you stuck to the time. So Dr. Saldana will have no complaint against me that I couldn't control them. They have done their job and made my job very easy. So at the outset, I'll also like to thank organizers for giving me the opportunity to chair these sessions. And thank you, everybody, both the participants as well as speakers in this today's CME. Thank you very much.
So at the outset, I must thank you for accepting our invitation to chair this session. In fact, the second co-chair, he is having the MD examination, so he could not join, and he gave me a ring in the morning. I feel that if he was also there, he would have enjoyed these three eminent speakers. I must say that they occurred in such a nice way, and we could have had a very good academic feast. Fortunately, I can also tell you that the participant shown on this screen is only 18. It is not 18 because the delegates have been given a separate link to hear the speakers. More than 150 to 160 have logged in. So in case if the delegates have any questions to the speakers, sir, you can still open the before we close this session.
Okay.
And wait for the inaugural.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, the speakers are willing to answer to your queries. Please, now it is open for discussions.
In fact, the chat box is still open. They can put the questions there and I can relay them to the speakers. Thank you, Brigadier Professor Chakraborty sir and Dr. Ivan Netto and Narendra Jadhav, Javadekar and Kulkarni for their excellent talk. And we close the session here on this note. Please stay on to the inaugural session. We'll be grateful to you. Your certificates will be couriered to you or will be given to you after about 15 days time when we get everything in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Saldana.
Thank you, sir. Over to Taura to the next session.
We shall now take a 10 minutes break before proceeding for the virtual ceremony of lamp lighting. Thank you so much.
The D.Y. Patil Medical College Pune has provided its campus as a facility to treat COVID positive patients. So here's a big thank you to Dr. Yashraj Patil and his team of doctors and everyone there who is assisting and caring for these COVID patients in these very tough times. So keep up the good work. Good luck, God bless, and stay safe.
Visionary Dr. P.D. Patil brings you an ultra-modern Dr. D.Y. Patil Medical College, Hospital and Research Center. This 2,000-bed hospital has spacious IPD wards and 64 comfortable private rooms. The advanced facilities like Da Vinci robot and 3 Tesla Biometrics Vida MRI 1/20th slice scan are one of the many highlights. Dr. D.Y. Patil Hospital. The future has already arrived here.